I'm introducing Gabriele Hilberg, who is a practicing psychotherapist in Mountain View, and we'll be speaking today about this emerging, enhancing consciousness.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Gabriele, for being here today.
Thank you for inviting me. It's like, I know that you guys have been together for a long time, and I think of you as the originators of a consciousness field that I'm tapping into. Professor Tiller, who I did the study with, is now 86.
And he hasn't quit.
No. And he has been at Stanford for a long time, and he started doing the early research on how the mind can affect matter while he was at Stanford. And he said he felt slightly schizophrenic because he was the department head of the material science department.
Yes.
And on the side, he was then using a device that he had designed to elevate the pH of water by 1 degree and to lower it by 1 degree. And Stanford wanted to get rid of him because he kept saying this consciousness research is done at Stanford. And, but they couldn't. So that's where it's a long story. And some of you have seen him in the movie, What the Bleep Do We Know? That's where I met him the first time. And so I tell you a little bit the story of how I arrived here. For about 4 years, I was working on my book. And I wanted to show people and kind of like bring together my observation that the number one issue in psychotherapy is the lack of friendly relationship people have with themselves. In the 70s, we talked about loving yourself. Well, that went that far. Then we talked in the 80s about increasing self-esteem, and that also died down because self-esteem is a very fickle way we are thinking of ourselves. So when people are attacking themselves or they are putting themselves down, criticizing, first of all, you can measure that the aura collapses. When you have a negative thought about yourself with a lot of emotions, you can collapse your aura by about 3 or 4 feet, and it comes in very narrow, and this is what we call feeling bad. It's very simple. When you feel bad because you think something or somebody said something, it has collapsed your energetic field. So as I was writing my book on showing how there are a number of factors that make us believe that we are separate, and it's that separation that makes us think we are not whole and complete. So I was working on my book. I actually got a very good editor, but it wasn't coming along. And I discovered that being German is my native country, and speaking German is my original language. Writing in English did not flow as it comes when I'm speaking. And then she said, so after each chapter then you should create exercises that people can do so that they practice what you just described in that last chapter. And that was it. Because I read those exercises, I don't do them. I have not yet met anyone, but please, maybe somebody's here who has done them. And so that just exhausted me on the spot. So right around my 60th birthday, I packed up everything. And I said, this is not flowing. If I was my own client, I would say, look at the track record. This is not happening. This is not in the flow. So I packed it up in a big plastic box, and then I was miserable because I had no other plan. I even considered painting my house, which I don't usually think that way. So then I got an invitation from the Heart Math Institute to join their luncheons for people who had donated money. And I'd given a little bit of money for hiring an expert on sunspot energy is kind of an interest of myself. And so I had gotten an invitation, I'd RSVP'd, And so on a Saturday morning, I was driving up Highway 9 and into Santa Cruz Mountains, and I missed it. And I ended up almost in Los Gatos. Had to come all the way back and then go down to Felton the other way. I was running late already. And I was considering, I just want to go home. But then I thought they have probably a name tag for me. It's not polite to not show up. So I raced down the other way, and it was a fabulous, fabulous luncheon. And there suddenly was this guy that I recognized, but then I recognized his wife, and I said, Jason, it's you. He had been an old client of mine, and he didn't know I belonged to Heart Math Institute as a member, and I didn't know he was on the committee, and he was volunteering, and so we got to talk. And then Jason said, you know, we are looking for a psychologist who might want to do a distant healing study with Professor Tiller. Would you be interested? And I got goosebumps. And I said, Jason, I have the topic. It's all in my plastic bucket. It's ready to go. I've researched it for 4 years. We're ready to go. And very soon after that, I met Professor Tiller. He said, welcome to the family. I thought that meant we're going to do the study, and off we went. So that was a sign to me that the way I had thought this would all unfold was not going to happen with my book. Then when I totally let go, and it was not very comfortable, then that door opened. And the great thing I instantly recognized is that with the transmission of energy that brings a change in consciousness and a change in well-being, there's no homework. There are no exercises. You don't have to do anything. This is without effort. And so it met all my criteria, and that is how I arrived doing this study with Professor Tiller. And I had suspected that we're going to get some good results, but actually the results we did obtain were outstanding. So we were planning things, and I was at Watercourse Way on a Saturday night, relaxing, and then I was driving Alma down towards Mountain View, and there's a certain stretch, and I don't know what it is. I always have good ideas. I kind of get into the zone right after San Antonio Road, and I go and I go. And what came to me is that even though my training as a psychotherapist is to help people understand and look at the problems they have and evolve and progress, that really one could talk to the higher self and perhaps get results. So as I was driving on Alma, two things came together. I had heard Wayne Dyer talk about a story, and I make it shorter, that somebody had told him about a tribe in Africa who, when there was a small tribe, when there was somebody who was misbehaving or violating the rituals, the customs of that tribe, everyone would stop, put that person in the middle, and then people would share what the good things they remembered of this individual until the person in the middle would begin to feel him or herself as that good person again. And then everyone would celebrate. Now you might notice that in Western culture, when we do an intervention, we put the person who has misbehaved in the middle, and we tell that person all the things that person did wrong.
Yes.
So
Ew.
that thought came together, and then I have studied the approach with David Hawkins, who wrote the book Power versus Force, for many, many years, and he actually was at Unity Church in Palo Alto a number of times. I was there. And in his latest book, Letting Go, which is the best book he has written yet, because he had an editor and that person pulled everything nicely together. So it's not as intuitive as sometimes his other books are. And in there, he said there is one key element, and that is if you can make the shift from ego-mind consciousness to knowing yourself as eternal being, your psychology will change. Your neurotic behaviors will change. They will just fall away. And when I put the two things together, driving along Alma, I thought, okay, we're going to send the remote intention to the higher self, helping you remember who you really are, and then measuring with psychological tests the changes in your behavior. So that's how things started and came together. And I will take you through our process and what we discovered right now. So this is tired of fixing yourself, reconnecting with your higher self without effort. That's the promise. And here we go. So enhancing consciousness through subtle energy transmission. So subtle energy, all of you know, it's outside of your five senses. You're not aware of it, but you can feel or intuit energy around you. So the physics of psychoenergetic science shows that human intention, which is information, can be stably imprinted into a simple intention host device. I'll show you in the next slide. And that device Professor Tiller designed at Stanford when he was there. So subtle energy transmission of our healing intention at the Hawkins map of consciousness was 546. And that powerfully affects internal changes in recipients. So we had somebody from the Hawkins Institute calibrate our consciousness energy in our healing statement. And so if some of you are aware of his map of consciousness, 300 is science, 400 is a little bit expansion, 500 is unconditional love. So that's why we were sure that our healing intention actually was a very high level of frequency. Most people hang out around 300, 350, in our circles perhaps higher. So we show that participants show an increase in self-compassion and greater coherence. That means greater wholeness and well-being at the level of P0001 after 8 months. So that means that the probability that our results occurred by chance is 1 in 10,000. So these are very, very resilient, strong results. I'll show you how we got there. I go quickly through this. Is somebody really interested in the science of the approach? Yes, good, okay. I can point you to some white papers and hands out. So the information is fundamentally, information is more fundamental than particles or energy. Human intention, which is information, can be stably imprinted into an electrical device, and this is a form of subtle energy beyond electromagnetic. The intention host device can subsequently change whole living systems in a specific and individual direction. So we can do wellness intention for different purposes. It can be directed to an individual. If you have a certain illness, it can be directed just to you. So an intention host device has been shown to impact changes in properties and of materials, inorganic and organic, experimental spaces, and living systems. And all experiments were at that same level of certainty. So here is the intention host device. It's a little thing like this. It looks like size of a tape recorder. And next slide. Good. I show you a little bit later the process of how we charge the device. So the human dilemma is about that we have a basic ego fear, I'm not enough. When we are about 2 years old, we develop a sense of me. Me, I, me, mine, myself. And we see that objects are now separate from us. The early months, we are in the attachment with the mother, and it's all interconnected, all one. But by age 2, when a child can say his or her own name, that is the beginning of separation. So as we grow up in the human condition, we cannot but have the sense that we are separate, which we later on have to shift out of and expand that, our awareness. So this is why separation, the idea that we are separate, is prevalent all around. It's like we can't help but begin to think that. Then our sensory perception creates the illusion of being separate. I see you over there. I don't see the interconnectedness. We see different objects. We are then also conditioned to think of separation. And then when the prefrontal cortex begins to develop, we actually can compare ourselves to others and compete with others. So you see a 3-year-old on a tricycle. The older cousin is on a bicycle. The 3-year-old thinks that is better than this. Comparison and some competition. So we fall into the pattern of comparing ourselves to other people because we can. Because our brain can do that. Is that a good idea? Not really. But that's where it's very tempting. And it's kind of automatic. And again, that creates separation. So self-judgment and judgment of others leads to feeling alone, isolated, and separate. We question our sense of worthiness. And we start chasing unobtainable standards of perfection. So as I was doing my research, I discovered that the English word worthiness appeared for the first time in the literature in the year of 1325. And so the word worthiness was created, probably a priest praying about being worthy in the eyes of God. So that wouldn't be so bad. But there's another function that our brain has, and that is that we always create opposites. So I say cold, you think hot. I say left, you think right. I say up, you think down. So when the word worthiness was created, as an artifact, we also created the word unworthiness. You see where that is going. So when you're honest with yourself and you tune inside and you try to feel what worthiness feels like, there's nothing there. Kind of feeling okay, feeling good. It's not like you suddenly feel worthy, unless you say, I'm worthy because. Then you can bring it up a little bit. But it's very easy to feel unworthy. And our entire culture was influenced by the religious ideas that we were unworthy in the eyes of God, and therefore we had to evolve and become good and become beautiful, as our fashion industry is now telling us. And it's all about becoming worthy, feeling worthy and deserving. And our whole economy is wrapped around it. So the only way out, I think, is really to drop both, the unworthiness and the worthiness, because you always will get both. So many of you know, what is the word? God, I'm thinking about his name. It will come to me.
Dalai Lama?
No, the World Wisdom Council and the Budapest Declaration said that for the first time in history, overcoming such flawed egocentric thinking is not only a precondition of personal growth and fulfillment, but also a precondition of human survival.
Oh, no, wait a minute. Huh. Sure. Huh.
So the lack of self-compassion is the root of all neurotic behavior. Consumed by feeling unworthy, we slide into addictions, depression, anxiety, self-destructive behaviors, personally and globally. And how are we going to fix that? Solving this crisis, we must find answers to these three critical questions. How do you overcome egocentric feelings of unworthiness, isolation, and separation? How do you create a personal experience of our shared humanity? And most people can sort of like think shared humanity up here, but how do you get to feel it? And how can we use the power of new thinking to initiate the necessary change in a large population soon? So here comes our subtle energy transmission. We believe that we can provide with our approach a subtle energy transmission that enhances consciousness through a vibrational resonance with your infinite self. And this is outside of time and space, meaning this transmission can go to anyone in the world, anywhere, in large groups, because this is not like an individual vibration for you, and in large populations. So our hypothesis and aim is this. The intention host device can be imprinted with intention, which is information, highly specific for the enhancement of consciousness. We have one study prior directed towards children with autism and their families, and we also got very good results there. The resulting imprinted intention host device is utilized to broadcast and deliver information to recipients worldwide. Now remember, this is an energetic transmission. You don't hear anything, you don't smell anything. It gets imbued into the walls of your home. So at stage 1, we have the imprinting device, and we have 4 meditators sitting around holding the specific intention, which in this case was about self-compassion. The intention host device get imprinted and then shipped to Professor Tiller's lab in Arizona, from where the transmission occurs to all the participants. We talked before about that the intention for the self-compassion was at the calibration of 4:45 at the Hawkins map of consciousness. Every hour for 24 hours, 7 days a week, the participants receive the transmission for 10 months. So you want to think of this as a technology-enhanced prayer. So every hour, this intention gets directed at you 24/7, 365 days, or however long that transmission is scheduled to be. That's a lot of prayer. So one of the great things that we discovered is that, you know, people go to visit John of God in Brazil and have a wonderful experience. And then it lasts for a few months and then it kind of like comes down, right?
Yeah.
So when there have been prayer studies where people have prayed for people in the hospital, they found out that it was kind of difficult to know how intensely somebody had prayed, what exactly they had prayed, even if they had the same script to pray. But it was like every person praying was coming in from a different level of consciousness or different ways of thinking about what was happening. So having a device that consistently admits the healing intention is very good in terms of knowing that it's going out to you, it's the same every hour, and we then can measure psychological effects over time. So a baseline survey was conducted at the beginning of the study. The same questionnaire was collected each month. I don't know in the self-compassion study or group at Stanford if you guys have used the self-compassion test with Christine Neff. That's the test we have used. You can find it on her website, selfcompassion.org. And you can fill out the self-compassion test. You get a score at the end, and you know exactly where you personally stand right now in terms of your own self-compassion. It's very cool. She is a Buddhist teacher and a psychologist professor in Austin, Texas. And so she has taken the Buddhist teaching and put it into this incredibly precise instrument to measure self-compassion. And it's internationally validated, and it's a very, very powerful measuring tool. We used that in our study, and then from past studies I inherited a depression test, anxiety test, and we used also a self-criticism test. So here are some of the results. And so you want to know that in therapy, basically every hour that a client is working on inner issues, it's really at the core, it's always about self-compassion. And because so much of the culture gives you a different feedback, like you should be critical of yourself, or other people are really easily critical of you. And growing up in Germany, it's a whole culture who likes to be critical. To change self-compassion through an energetic transmission and observe real changes is awesome. Because this transmission can go to Kansas or to Nebraska or to places where people don't have access to therapists. So here's what we saw. There was less self-judgment, less feeling isolated, more self-kindness, more the feeling of being part of the human condition, common humanity, more mindfulness, and more equanimity, meaning that you don't make a mistake mean something profoundly about yourself or as a deep judgment. So these results, as you can see, it's like we had a little dip here, and we don't know why, and then it picked up again. I collected 96 testimonials because I wasn't sure what people were actually experiencing as they were beginning to change. And for this study, I was fortunate enough to have many of the participants be former clients of mine, so I knew typically their issues, how they had worked with themselves, so I could gauge from a clinical perspective the nature of their testimonials. And we found that people spontaneously had a greater sense of organization. There was substantial weight loss through better food choices. There was an increase in resiliency to challenges, meaning whatever problems we were encountering, you stepped out of it quicker, much more light, much less entrenched. Feeling more relaxed and self-critical with no effort, and progressive perspective and life changes. So what that meant in practical terms was that out of the actual size was 56 participants, there were 5 people who independently had started making their bed in the morning. Now, that might not sound like a lot to you, but those people had not made their beds for at least 15, 20 years. And suddenly, we looked at, what is this? Well, there was a need to have greater order internally being matched by externally. So we had a whole bunch of people clean up garages, clean up houses. I was cleaning up my little closet where I had all my tea bags. Oh, it still looks beautiful. And it's just like was this urge to have the internal order that was developing, that sense of wholeness, to be reflected. And if you have a pile of clutter sitting there, that does not resonate well. So in one family, the husband and the wife lost together 45 pounds without trying. And the elderly parents of the husband also lost weight. So how is that possible? So we discovered that because the intention gets transmitted to your home, everyone in your home will be affected to some degree or other. Now, we found that the person who was named as a participant in the study had the most impact. So when this couple were taking care of his older parents for 6 weeks, the dad, who had never eaten properly, started wanting better food. So they also lost weight. What else? Let me go on. So somebody might say, well, that could be just the placebo effect. Which is possible because we did not have a control group in that study. And I tell you about the new study where we will have 2 control groups. So we saw increased coherence, meaning order in family members, and improved animal behavior. And so this was a very shy rescue dog who had been adopted 7 years before. And he would have a habit of growling at men and trying to bite into their legs. 7 years. So a few weeks into the study, he was sitting next to males and allowing them to pet him. Now, what's really cool about this is that the dog doesn't know anything about the placebo effect because the dog doesn't know he's part of the study. Through the energetic transmission that was transmitted to his owner. We also had, we had a cat, very shy, skittish cat, 12 years old, suddenly started sitting on the armrest next to our other participant and sitting there for hours. So what we see in these two animal examples is that the coherence, the higher frequency of the energy being sent to those homes allowed for the animals to go to a higher place within themselves and let go of neurotic behavior. Now this also might be, anyone who wants to do a dissertation on studying animal behavior, and some people believe that animals have souls and have different levels of consciousness. Not every dog is at the same level as other dogs. One could do an intention transmission just for animals and observe the behavior. So here are some key points in our discussion. Human consciousness is a source of information, meaning that when we wrote the healing intention, and then the meditators held that intention imbuing the device, and that takes about 2 to 3 hours, that actually thought can be transmitted into that crystalline structure that's inside that device, and it can hold. That a healing intention resonates with the higher vibrational consciousness in a person, and therefore bypassing the ego-mind resistance. Now, in my field of psychology, psychotherapy, one of the core ideas is that we're dealing with people's resistance to change. It's the number one theme. And so to have a methodology where the ego mind cannot even hear anything, cannot bring up resistances, and it just goes under the radar, goes in, you can't even build up resistances. And so people would write testimonials saying, I don't know what happened. I used to be very scared being alone in a hotel. I always liked to have other people around. I went on this bike trip. I stayed in this hotel. I was relaxed. I slept 8 hours. I feel great. I've never had that in my life. I'm 36 years old. Could that be related to the study? We don't know for sure. But when we have a number of behavior that people have said, I haven't done that before. I have no conscious thought of doing it differently. That's very interesting. And because we all have very busy lives, and some people do meditate for an hour or 2 each day, but particular parents with little kids, you say you meditate, they go, when? I can hardly get to the gym. So here I fall a little short because I cannot really repeat Professor Tiller's physics. It's 34 white papers that you can find on his website, tiller.org.
That's okay.
Pardon?
I said, that's okay.
But here's the formula that means something, and what this means is the information of relationship to entropy.
Empathy?
Entropy, meaning in the way everything starts falling apart. If you own a home, you don't do anything, it begins to fall apart. So everything in life moves towards entropy, unless you put effort into it and stop it by balancing it. So what we found is that we're sending out the intention transmission, that it stopped entropy. It stopped going downhill. This is another discussion on information and entropy. And here is basically our design. We started with a baseline survey. Then every 3 months the device has to be freshly imprinted. And we went up to 12 months and we did these different tests. And what we found is that information psychology, meaning that psychological change can occur through the transmission of information, is a radical departure from traditional psychotherapy approaches and practices. So when people are using, for example, homeopathy, it's very close in principle because it's an energetic property of drops. It's not like really in the drops. So we're dealing with the whole field of subtle energy. And we know about subtle energy techniques in psychology, the tapping, EFT. In a way, hypnosis could fall also in there. But what we are looking at is that this is feasible and cost-effective, promoting wholeness and well-being in large populations independent of location. So as a sideline, Professor Tiller has a project with Todd Welch going at this time, where they are sending a healing intention to certain cities and using the Hawkins scale of consciousness to calibrate the change. Now this is not very classic research design, but what the hell? It's like, let's try it and see what happens. So somebody might say, well, this is like subliminal piping in of information. And what we found is that even though the people are not holding great clarity about what exactly was in our healing intention, that people only will progress in accordance to their own soul and karmic path. So while we have our healing intention at the high calibration level, we're not doing anything to anyone. It's like we're creating the space so somebody can step into that energy that's being offered. But the transformation is based on the person giving permission on the subconscious level to allow for that transformation. So we had one case where a woman was in the study. She was living at home with her parents. She was about 34 years old. She had just moved back. And so the transmission was sent to the parents' house. Her mother, who had never done yoga, never had any massage, decided to go to a yoga class with my client. And then the mother lost over 30 pounds. Now the stepdad, living in the same living space, did not seem to have changed. So as we were kind of like exploring, what might that be about? She said, well, you know, in the 2008 crash of the stock market, my stepdad lost a whole bunch of money. And every day he's lamenting about the money he lost, how angry he is at himself. And that's what he does day in and day out. And so one might speculate that the stepdad was so entrenched in his negative thinking that even the beaming of the higher frequency into that same home did not change anything in him that we could see. while the mother, who wasn't even part of the study, showed drastic changes. Now, the way we could think is maybe the mother was already ready to change. It just took that little bit of turbocharge. So that's where we are pretty sure that we are not sending the energy to anyone who doesn't want it, because you can always say no at the deeper level. And it takes your own deeper sense of wanting that consciousness evolution to bring it forward and to expand. And we found that some people had tremendous shifts during the study. Other people noticed smaller steps, but we don't know really what is happening at the deepest level and over time. So part of this study, the drawback was that it was beyond my own ability to create a control group and the treatment group. It was just like, I'm a full-time psychotherapist. This was my hobby on the side. So, but you know, traditional science is not very accepting of subtle energy work. And so we have to speak their language. So at present, we are creating a study that will start April 16th. And we have a joint venture now with the Chopra Foundation, Professor Tiller, Professor Paul Mills, who is a professor at UC San Diego. He is our statistician. And the Meraki Institute, which is designated to research consciousness. So at present, we are recruiting 300 participants, and we have 2 control groups, one to measure the placebo effect, and 1 control group that doesn't even know anything about our consciousness study, but does the same surveys under a different umbrella. So we are hoping that we can show that there's a true effect of subtle energy. So here is the question. In this process of putting the new study together, I did a lot of research on who has done subtle energy studies, and some of you might know Marilyn Schlitz from the IONS Institute. She wrote a paper giving 24 pointers of what researchers have to observe when they do subtle energy research. And we have them all covered in our study. But Dean Radin, who is their top technology and research person, in one lecture I listened to last summer at the IONS conference in Chicago, he said, look, everything is entangled.
Right.
How can you separate out, right, and not have anything cross over? So this will be very interesting, because who knows what we're going to find. But we have excellent research design, excellent statistical approach, and the study will be over 18 months. So we have one group who is the control group, and one is the treatment group for the first 6 months. So one group does not get the transmission, second group does get the transmission. Then for the next 6 months, they both get the transmission. And then the first group who didn't get the transmission gets it at the end, and the first treatment group stops getting the transmission, so we can measure what happens after the transmission stops. Yeah, very good. And so to the other factor that I'm excited about is that we're going to have monthly webinars connecting all the participants worldwide in conversations. So we did monthly webinars for the self-compassion study, and there's only that much you can talk about. What you're sensing, what's happening. So this webinar for 18 months will include many, many other interesting conversations. So I noticed that the participants coming in from the Chopra Foundation are more mature, they're long-time meditators, and I get overall the sense that many of our participants have attended seminars on consciousness and so on. What I have noticed is that in the past, many of us have listened to teachers who have explained their experience and guided us in the right direction. But I'm curious about what is happening at the grassroots movement. Like in my clinical practice, I get sometimes reports when I kind of check on, did you have any spiritual experience when you were a little kid? And people say, I never told anyone about it, but I had this experience when I was 4 years old. Because the ego mind is not yet fully in place. And so the veil between higher consciousness, other dimensions, past life, if you like, is much thinner. And so we think that children don't know a lot, or they grow into what we officially think we know. But with my own children, I discovered that they had levels of consciousness, awareness, things they saw, things they understood, that was way beyond what they had heard and observed in this lifetime. So one of the great things is going to be, I'm going to be the facilitator of these webinars, and I get to pick topics and ask questions and hear from people in this protected forum of what really happened. Like, what are your earliest experiences, or what other kind of experiences have allowed you to be impacted, and what change has occurred in your life? Now, I know in the field of psychotherapy, we believe that childhood conditions us, genetics conditions us, and then depending on how happy your childhood is, you kind of like progress in a linear fashion. Depending on how bad it was, the official dogma is that you can then improve slowly, and it's still like Swiss cheese, it has holes in there that just gets plastered over. So that's a pretty dismal trajectory. When you consider that people had perhaps some past lives where they had tremendously great parents, the question is, how do you know in childhood that your parent isn't great? If that's the only parent you have, or two. So where's the knowledge coming from? That this is not a great parent. This is a child. I'm the parent, right? And do we need great parents each lifetime? It's a question. So it gives people permission to think they could be healthier than the psychological dogma is presently allowing for. Now, people that have transformational changes, that's almost like a quantum leap, they don't come to therapy because there's not room for having had that transformation where the trajectory is changing. And so we are missing out on hearing from these people what happened. Under what conditions did you suddenly understand something and your life moved in a different direction? I want to know. And so people will have experiences around the death of family members. And that's another topic that people generally don't share with friends or other relatives because they don't want to be cuckoo. So this forum for the 18 months will give us incredible topics to share and to connect over and see what people are bringing and what is really going on in their life and how spiritual awakening really rises in each one of us. I tell you a quick story out of my own life. I was raised Catholic, so when I was 9 years old, my first communion was coming up. And the day before, on a Saturday at 3:15, was my confession. And I was prepared. I had searched whatever kind of sins I could find. And then in the preparation lessons, they had said, you know, you're pure, you connect with God, and you are like, you know, you're in the pure light. Something like that. So I remember walking home from the confession, and I kind of like was skipping along, and then at a certain point, suddenly everything turned into golden light. I could still see the houses, but it was all in this golden, incredible light, and I felt a happiness and bliss that I thought, oh, this comes because I went to confession, now I'm pure, this is the connection with God. Of course, that's what they told us. But I knew to walk home slowly so that the bubble would not get interrupted. So 4 weeks later, we were on schedule for another confession because I wanted to keep us going. I did my confession. I'm expecting the golden light. Nothing. I concluded I must have overlooked a sin because otherwise it would have happened again. Well, it never came back. And I discovered it probably wasn't about missing out on a few sins. I couldn't remember. But I didn't think of that experience until I was 36 years old. And in a seminar, somebody mentioned something like that. And since then, whenever I have a male client who was raised Catholic and was an altar boy, I ask, what was your sacred experience? And they come up with all kinds of memories of how they knew that being at the altar with the priest and the frankincense and the singing, that they had a sense of the sacred. So this is where I'm delighted that I have these webinars coming up with very, very interesting people while our healing transmission is going on, and that will go on automatically. So if any one of you feels inclined to join the study, please do so. We do charge $33 per month, and that is because investors are not that interested in consciousness studies because there's nothing to really sell as pharmaceutical stuff or for the military. So we had to take life in our own hands, and so with the amount of $33 from 300 people, we can kind of like sort of finance the study with all of us being volunteers and pitching in. So that's the end of my talk. Thank you for listening, and now we're going to have some questions.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us what cities Chiller is focusing these on, this energy on?
The Midwest.
Oh, yay!
Yeah.
That's why I
So
voted for Bernie.
There you go.
yeah. So, but he's not publicly talking about
No,
that
no, but
because he doesn't want any interference.
Right,
or-
right. We won't tell anybody.
Mhm. Yes.
Thank you so much. I have a question about how do you transmit this energy to a particular home or group? And how do you transmit it to a town?
Great. Okay. So I don't know exactly what he does with the town, but what we do is we have the names, addresses, and phone numbers scroll in front of the device once an hour, 24-second, for the duration of the study, so that there is an entanglement once an hour.
Mhm.
That's how Professor Tiller is thinking about it.
There's also now a geolocation that certain participants have provided. We do have your address and things like that. but
And I
now
think we're
the
adding the
geolocation is
Google
even-
map.
Yes, the geolocation. For,
Yeah. That's new.
yeah.
Yes.
Well, I don't quite understand the device.
Okay. I don't either. It's a box that has plastic around, and there's a crystalline structure in there, meaning crystals.
Yeah.
And when the meditators are sitting around the device, focusing all on the participants of the study, the intention, they speak it out loud, and then they wait until they get the feeling that it's done. And that charges the device. And every 3 months, you have to refresh it. That's, I don't know, he found out that it kind of goes down a little bit and then you refresh the device.
But you didn't tell me anything about the device.
I haven't opened the box. It's like it's screwed together, and I have seen the device. It's a flat box. I think in one of the white papers he is describing it.
It's what does it do to
It's
the
crystals.
energetic field? Oh,
It's got crystals inside.
Yeah,
oh.
So you
and
know, when
crystals
we-
are
when we
are
go-
Oh,
crystal
okay,
information.
okay.
Yeah.
I didn't-
Crystal
yeah.
information.
Yeah.
That's the same.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yes.
I didn't know what it was.
Yeah. Very good. So some crystal structure in there that then sends and holds the energy and then sends it.
Yeah, okay.
Now, one of the interesting things we had in the first study was that highly sensitive people noticed a change in energy the day the device was imbued. This was before the addresses scrolled in front of the device.
Mhm.
So, and those people were very clear, they could feel it already. So this raises very interesting questions about entanglement. Do we entangle just by connecting with something?
Yeah.
Does anybody- Oh, I have another question,
Yes.
but I don't want to. I know this sounds a little negative, but if this got into the hands of people who wanted to promote something negative, could they do that?
Very good question. And so, a few years ago, Professor Tiller had the devices available for purchase, so that people could meditate if you had, a certain illness, that you could meditate healing thoughts and then have it under your bed, and it radiates out the higher frequency. So we have withdrawn it from the market because he was concerned, because he was approached by some military people, and they always find the latest technology.
Yeah.
So it's not available. From what I have understood, it's that you have to be receptive
Yes,
to
right.
negative energy to take it in. How much we're still impacted by it, I don't know. So that's where in human history, every good thing has been also used for destructive
Yeah.
things.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, it seems like the opposite. Okay, I sort of get the idea that you believe, or whatever the situation is that we come in with not such a good idea about ourselves. We are less than. And we come in that way. We're born that way, lifetime
Mhm.
after lifetime.
Well, it's like, see, I don't think we come in that way. I think that infants, when you look at them, are clear wholeness and still connected with other dimensions and feel loved. It's that when our brain develops and suddenly our five senses create separation.
Then that comes in, I'm not good enough. When
Yes.
the brain is developed, then.
Yes, so when the brain is developed enough that you see objects as separate,
Okay,
then the brain is also capable of comparison.
okay.
You know, you see little kids going, just my brother had the same amount of candy I have.
Right.
Or even my grown-up kids, they go, what Easter rabbit is the same size, you know? See, it's that our brain can compare. That's a good thing. But then,
Why do we make it negative then? It's a good thing. It's a
Mhm.
good thing.
it's a good thing.
And then so what makes it go to the negative energy?
That the comparison,
Right. You don't have.
then there is a better than me.
So comparison automatically says better than.
For my clinical practice, I notice that people only compare themselves to other people when they know they're gonna come out worse than the other person. If you feel good about something you do you compare yourself going, oh, you know, you're not as good as I am in this? No. So when we admire something, we go, oh my God, what you can do, I can't.
Okay.
And so it sneaks in there just because we can think that way.
And so then the counter to that then is living a spiritual life,
Yes.
thinking positive thoughts about ourselves.
Yes. So it's like people think when we are 18 or maybe 27, we are developed. No. That's where most people stop,
Yeah.
right? So then adult development has to do with noticing and accepting that we have limits. Very difficult lesson for people. That I cannot do some things I wish I could do. Some people deal with the fear of not being good enough by overcompensating. Those are the highly accomplished people. And then something goes wrong. Parent dies, kid is in drug rehab, and they wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and go, oh God, I'm a failure, I'm not good enough. It's right lurking there. Yes.
Yeah, I think what one way of answering your question is basically we all come in with our package
Mm-hmm.
to deal with, and not being good enough is part of that package, or I'm better than is a part of the package.
But that's
Yeah,
what I
so-
was wondering.
Yeah,
Is
it's
that
all,
very-
yeah, it's just.
So here's my question. It's
just
like,
working on it.
I'm not sure. If children in Africa, for example, you know, when you see people that are just so happy, they have nothing to eat, but they smile.
Mm.
They don't look very self-critical.
Okay.
But I want to go and ask. I don't know.
Did you ever ask them?
No, not yet.
Okay.
See, that's where I'm curious. Is it just our Western culture that gets us there?
I once
So
said,
is this generational? I mean, ancestors and ancestors and then the passage of all of that.
that's what Paul said.
Past life
Mm-hmm.
stuff,
Yes.
it's all past life stuff.
Mhm. So if you come from a highly critical set of grandparents who think in black and white, very rudimentary ways of perceiving life, it's good or it's bad, then you see several generations dealing with that impact.
Yeah.
And so it takes effort in adulthood to know we are not separate. Right? And it takes experience, when you notice we're not separate. Just reading about it will give you knowledge up here, but you don't feel it. Yes.
Well, This is many, many years ago. I was probably just opening up, experiencing a lot of things, but was at this woman's house, and she said something that's impacted me ever since. And she
Could you
was
speak up just a little?
she was focusing. I think she was into art, whatever she was, but she, for some reason, was talking about not being very good at math, and she had had this realization that she didn't have to be good at math because that person was good at math. That takes away all the comparison, and you can be happy that I don't have to do that because I'm better at this.
Mhm. So here's one more step that David Hawkins was suggesting. It's like at the ego mind level, this comparison, the lower, the jealousy, the feeling like I don't belong, the isolation.
Right.
The moment you identify yourself as part of eternal being, all that is, some of the neurotic thought process just falls away.
Yeah.
Because the neurotic thinking doesn't have life in itself. It's what we make up. And so when you know yourself as eternal being, which is perfect, right? It's timeless. And I go, I'm part of that. So, I'm limited here? Sure. I have a few quirks. Sure. I don't have to pretend they're not there.
Monkey mind.
Yes. So when I finally understood this whole thing about worthiness, as I was starting to write my book, I had this time where I felt giddy. Like I wanted to go in Safeway and tap somebody on the shoulder and say, do you know we're all limited? And if we all just admit it, we can be free of pretending we're not and have a good time. And then be the best we can be, which we're trying anyhow. But this whole pretending that I am good enough, that I am everything, that I don't have flaws, is very tiring.
It's what? It's what?
Tiring,
Oh, well, it's just a misunderstanding.
yes,
She has a question, right?
yes.
The way you structured the study, there's no group that doesn't get anything.
That is our second control group who doesn't even know we are doing the consciousness study.
So they are participating in something utterly different.
Yes, but they take the same surveys.
And do they attend the seminars,
No.
webinars? Okay. Because my second part of the question is, how do you separate the webinar influence from the actual
Yes.
thing?
All we can do is look at, the people that get the transmission for the 6 months, do they have the same test results while they're all attending the webinar? So we checked that with Professor Paul Mills, and he said this is done all the time in consciousness studies, that you expect a high level of entanglement anyhow,
I
but
was
you,
just gonna say, it's all entangled, whether they know it or not,
right,
just by being in that group.
yes. And we are applying the rigor of traditional research to
Right.
see, are the test results different? And we have from this study, one of the tests, the NEF self-compassion test, which will be the same in the new study. So we have some research results and we can compare.
Somebody got a question, because
Yes.
I've got.
I have a question. I think it was in the third slide in to your presentation. It was something about getting this information out to the population soon. Do you
Yes.
recall which one? Why is that?
Well, the urgency of the worldwide crisis, that it has to be resolved for people to, by people going to a higher level of consciousness.
Mhm.
Right? It cannot be resolved at the level that conflict, wars have been
Yeah.
trying to resolve things before. So how do you get large populations to a higher level of consciousness? So the device can send the transmission to thousands and thousands of people at the same time.
The device that you're talking,
Mm-hmm.
what is it?
It's a intention host device.
That's right. That has the program or the intention, the vibration,
Yes,
the frequency
right.
of the intention.
Mhm.
And I forgot, where does the intention, what's the source of that intention? Where is it, what's bringing the energy
Okay,
into the device?
so the healing intention for the self-compassion study I wrote based on what I thought was a reflection of the higher self. It is on the website, selfcompassionintention.com. You can read the healing intention. Also, the new intention for the Consciousness Field Project is also on the website, consciousnessfieldproject.org.
Can have an opposite effect or way of using it. In other words, can it be tuned to drain out negative energy of like ISIS? You know, just focusing it on that and just draining out negative
I think
energy rather than trying to put positive in it. Because you're putting positive in it, it's going to go on top of the negative.
See, we don't know about that. What I have learned from telekinesis and subtle energy experiments is that you do not create an against energy, but you invite the connection for the highest good of all. So, I don't know how that would work to send higher energy to ISIS. We don't know enough about, at least I don't,
Yeah.
what motivates people.
Yeah,
To
I
be
think it
part
would
of
be
ISIS?
worth considering though, draining out the negative energy first. You know, it's like rinsing clothes that you just washed, and you want to get rid of the dirty water before you. I mean, after you wash, get rid of the dirty water before you rinse it.
But
So-
or is it that
The
all this
transformation.
has to be included in one thing? The-
See, yes, so the division of what is good and bad is again our brain doing it,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
right?
Well, I'm pretty clear on what's good and bad. What's bad is what creates suffering. What's good is what creates happiness and well-being.
Mhm. So, I don't argue with that, but you wanted to say something about that and then.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We're all human, ISIS included. So whatever works for a human being is going to work for them. Even if they're starting down here, you're still going to raise that level of well-being and self-compassion a little bit. So it's not like covering it over, it's just you're helping them go to the next level just like you're helping us.
So, what you're talking about is like, we assume that all human beings have a higher self or are connected to the eternal being.
Yes.
And that no matter what behavior somebody engages in, which is an aberration of our ego mind, anything destructive,
Yeah.
we're lost, right? We're lost. That the desire to connect with eternal being might even connect ISIS people with the energy.
Because the only reason that they're in ISIS is they want to connect with each other around a value. And the value is expressing their extreme frustration with the way the world is. You
Yeah,
know,
so
it's
one
like
of our ideas is to find a penitentiary where we have people long enough incarcerated so that one group gets the healing intention, the other group doesn't, and then we measure over time the changes that we see.
I recommend you see Michael Moore's movie about going to the different
Yes.
countries.
Yes.
Because there's a country where the prisons are hardly prisons, they're healing places. And that would be a really interesting place to do your study.
I come to you and I get the reference
Yes,
after
yeah.
this. Yes.
I wonder if this is related, but I remember when TM was starting and they did meditations, they said that they could meditate in a certain manner and the crime rate in the towns went down.
Yeah.
So do you think that this is related, that even if you don't have a device, that
Yes.
people praying and meditating are helping to raise
Yes.
their
Right.
consciousness?
Yeah.
Well, I've just been, remember the old things back in the 70s, 80s, whenever we were all into pyramid technology? Well, I don't know if you know of a man named David Wilcock, but he
Yes.
has been studying these things for many years. He's about to come out with a new book called Ascension. But anyway, so I listened to his wisdom things on Gaiam, and he's back into talking about pyramids and what they do. And he was reminding me of stuff I've done and known before, but if you get a pyramid and you put water under it, and they did this in prisons in Russia and other places, the Russians have been far out on this kind of technology in many, many, many ways. They're way ahead of us at what they understand. Because he's always quoting them. But anyway, you put water under a pyramid and give it to somebody with a problem, it'll heal them. So I had just thought, because I have a pyramid of just one made out of clay that I got when I was in Peru many years ago, but with Vi, and I was thinking that probably online there would be a lot of things about pyramid technology, and I'm going to order a few of these, because if you could just put a glass of water under this pyramid, and it's the shape of it that makes this energy, which is gravity coming up and coming down, it's consciousness. He's fascinating, because it's all this kind of thing, that I'm going to do that, and pass it out to my grandchildren and whoever else I can get to drink it.
Yes.
How much, if I don't, not somebody doesn't participate in the study, but you have this thing in your house, is it a contract? It's like you take it up with Comcast? I mean, how do you structure your group to deliver
I know
it?
that.
And how much does it
Professor
cost to have
Tiller
it
has
in the
some
house?
friends worldwide. And people got sick. He created a healing intention for somebody specifically in Costa Rica. The device stays in his lab,
Okay.
Yeah.
and the energy gets transmitted through the energetically.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's not in their house?
You had a question earlier.
So, in the teaching of Reiki, there is this symbol that is a distance healing symbol. That distance healing symbol activates that energy, that consciousness, that infinite intelligence, to inviting that by the person who's choosing to create that relationship. And then you bring that intention, what Chris was saying, instead of sending it directly to Isis, what you do is you send it from your heart to the heart of Creator, the infinite intelligence, which is not in time or space or linear time. And then it is being sent from the infinite intelligence to wherever. And one of the things that I've come to learn is that if you send it directly, to one person in particular without their permission, what occurs is you're violating their free will of choice. So thereby you then inherit their karma as well, and you participate in their very karma. So it's as you put it out, it comes right back to you in that reciprocity. It is a natural formula. There's a mathematical equation of the universe that states that. It's basically as what goes around comes back around. So I'm just wondering, have you studied that yet?
No.
Has Professor Tiller?
I will talk to you afterwards too. See, it's like people have these things that they know, and it's impossible for anyone to know everything.
Right.
And we know that finally.
Well, this institute you mentioned, that's part of your study, the ICA.
The Meraki Institute,
How do you spell that?
MERR,
AKI.
meaning it's Greek and it means doing work from the soul.
One more.
Yes.
There's in the article, The Optimist, the one that came out recently.
Yeah.
There's a Russian physicist. His name is Yuri.
Yes.
Are you familiar
Yes,
with this work?
I know him.
Okay.
Yes.
I just find that what you're doing and what he's doing has very much greater depths of exploration.
Yes. So the Russian theme comes up over and over again, and the reason for that is because we had the Iron Curtain. Western scientists went into one direction with their thoughts, and the Russians were always into subtle energy, telekinesis. So they have their whole science wrapped around it. And we're finally coming to, have a crossover. So Yuri created a cleansing spray that can eradicate negative energy just by spraying it. And he's still using it every day before he goes to bed. So some inventor using their own product every day is good.
So where do you get that?
Yeah. Could you sell it, please?
Yeah, on the website, Yuri's website.
Yeah.
What they found is that in the early days doing subtle energy research, they had monks chanting in the lab for 6 weeks to clear it of negative thoughts and energy. And you just take his spray and it clears it in a minute.
And he saved it in water,
Yes.
which is very similar to what Dr. Emoto does.
So I have that spray in my office. And after a couple who is fighting, I just spray the room, spray myself.
Well, we need these websites, all the different things,
Okay.
that one or more, and if you do, I can send them out to everybody.
Yes.
And I'm gonna look up pyramid technology and see what I find, and I think all these things using these subtle energies are the way to go.
Yes.
And
That is the
if our
frontier.
intention is for the highest good,
Yes.
then we can't worry, I think, Chris, about what it does. And it's very hard because the cruelty in this world just makes me cry. But somehow, if you fight it, it
Yes.
goes like that. So we have to, somehow it has to go around it, because I remember Wayne Dyer, one of my favorite guys, talked about, this little spark in everybody,
Yes.
no matter how, quote, wrong or evil they're acting, and we can see those sparks grow,
Yes. And so what we say in our study is that people will grow according to their own karmic path.
Right, that's good. That's good.
Hey, karma, you said?
Yeah.
Karmic path.
Karmic
Their
path.
way. Each person
No,
has a way.
I know karma, but there's also another idea about karma. But karma only exists if you actually believe it.
Well,
I'm just saying. There's different points of view about it.
Right. So given that we have about 150,000 thoughts a day, most of which we are not aware of, about 5% is conscious. So we have all kinds of beliefs going on underneath. And some are really good, they work. And only the ones that don't work become a hiccup. And we go, oh, I have a belief about that. So we can't possibly clear out all of our beliefs. It's not possible.
and they may not even be ours. They may
Yeah.
be others that's just
There's
floating
somebody,
around.
somebody else
And
sent
that's
me that belief.
consciousness.
And there's some people who say the belief is not the truth at all.
No, but what we're seeing right now in this country, we are seeing the extremes. Which way do we want to go,
Yes.
and
And grow.
grow?
Yes.
I still wanna know where to get that spray though.
Yes.
I think of Matt looking at the bigger picture, the master trick is getting into the subconscious mind, because what we experience out there is what we're constantly broadcasting out there. We've all heard that. But what we're broadcasting, we're not, as we just mentioned, not even aware of that. So we can be creating all kinds of crud in our conscious level, saying, gee, I'm putting out this loving energy, why is my life messed up? So the big trick is getting at the subconscious programming,
Mm-hmm.
the bad stuff, and clearing that out. And you know,
Yep.
when I figure that out, you'll know, because my aura will be blinding, and you'll need sunglasses to see.
Very good. One last question, and then we should wrap up.
I was just thinking, one of the points there that results from a lot of this is the idea of scarcity, and on a global level, that's, I think, where a lot of challenges are, and also individual levels, because of, you know, families having not enough, and then it just overblows and becomes, so then people hoard, and then it's all
Right.
out of balance. So that's another piece that I think is probably, you'll probably address.
Yeah. Big questions. Last.
Just wanna say the
Yes.
skio machine, it reminded me, of course, that the Russians also have these energetic medical devices, of whom there are many with the same, where they're actually helping, you know, from the higher consciousness, the machine is programmed to send to every cell of the body, and that's how, you know, it's a very similar concept. Yeah.
I mean, and also just kind of, is what you were saying and what Chris was say about ISIS is that what we keep on hearing all the time is we got to get rid of them, we got to destroy them, and blah, you know, instead of finding out what motivates these people, where does it come from, finding out more about that, you know, about these people.
Isn't
Yeah.
that really a part of ourselves
Yeah,
that we
that's part-
bury? Isn't that really us?
Well, it's part of us, yeah.
Yeah.
That part of us that is afraid of change.
Right.
That's manipulated.
But like we said before, they're also motivated by values,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And that in itself is a good thing. Anyone who is striving to stand for something that is of a higher good. Now, what is a higher good might be a different opinion, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think
But
that's
when you
where
get to the oneness, then you really know what's right. But if you're just into
Yes.
the separation,
yes.
me and them,
As in,
Yeah.
we are all one.
Yeah, but the scarcity factor is part of what they are dealing with, because they don't feel acknowledged and part of, and, you know, why is the United States have everything and so many other places don't? That doesn't sound right.
So that requires that we actually experience ourselves as one.
Yep.
And as long as we're just thinking it, we get that far, but it really takes the experience. And that is what some of our participants in the self-compassion study have noticed, that there were spontaneous moments of knowing that we're part of eternal being. People who typically would not have thought about it. Just one last snippet here. A client of mine who is a receptionist, has been a receptionist for 30 years. She was in the first study. The study starts on a Monday afternoon. She calls me. She says, I'm sitting at my desk, bored like always. And I'm thinking, I'm part of the universe. I'm eternal being. That's not me thinking it. Right? So, in the contrast of her typical boredom, having that thought was awesome. So thank you for
Thank
listening,
you.
and
Thank you
one
very much.
last
Does,
question.
does prayer come into this at all?
Yes, so prayer is similar to intention, but prayer is not as consistent over time. So when you do prayer for somebody you know is injured, and you would like to extend that positive charge to that person, I think that works. To do it at a larger scale to many people, they have not been successful in the prayer studies to create that consistency.
Because I've thought a lot of people have been healed by prayer. And
Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
that whole thing.
Always, yes.
Yeah.
It would be really interesting to study the Unity 24-hour prayer vigil, which they do 24 hours, 7 days a week. You can call and have a prayer. They will keep you on that list for 30 days.
Yeah.
and to measure.
Right.
Really interesting, because that's already set up.
You see, it's like we don't know that much about subtle energy, so there's so much room for dissertations and research. It's like, you know, just the ideas we're coming up here with. Very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being available.
Do you have any website? Do you want to have?
Yes.
The handouts, Gabriele.
So there is a handout out there for the new study. You can find me on the website selfcompassionintention.com.
Is that on the?
Is that on there?
Yes, it's on there. And my personal website is GabrieleHilberg.com. That's
and
where
when
you,
does the study start? Do you want to say that
16th.
again? It starts very
it
soon.
starts next Saturday, April 16th.
Well, so if we want to sign up, we should do that.
Yes.
I was part of the previous study. I was participating, and
Right.
I'm going to join this study too.
Yes.
So-
Okay. Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.